What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Tuesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Usually on these massive slates, DK kind of gets rid of the late games to, spend some more family time with you. However, 11 of the 12 games here tonight are starting 8 p.m. Eastern or earlier, so big slate here tonight, but looking forward to it. Just have a couple notes before we talk about it a little bit. Over the weekend, got to give the man his flowers. Cliffy shipping everything he entered on Saturday with a Montreal 1, St. Louis 1 double stack there. Yeah, man, that was a great night from you. Shipping everything, got a $5.55 ticket, won the $12 single entry. Big first night back for you. I know you're going to probably play a little humble, so I'd give you a little shout out there for you.
Yeah, it was a really good night. It was the first clean sweep night of the season. I had one other pretty good night back in November, but this is like the first, like you said, I swept every contest I was in. Always don't hate that. So, $12 single entry, $5 single entry, the lower dollar 5 maxes, like you mentioned that ticket. Yeah. St. Louis won, Montreal won, Zach Werenski with Aiden Hill and net. It's funny. I was telling you, I knew that I was off to a good start because I think Thomas scored in the first period of the St. Louis game. Was a Caulfield scored in the first period of the Montreal game. Zach Werenski had, I think, 2 assists in the first period or something like that. So, I knew I was off to a good start, but I thought by the end of the games that Broberg and Neighbors had screwed me because they just didn't do anything. So, I didn't even check the contest till the next morning. Nice to find that little boost to the bank account. So, yeah, real good night. Certainly take it as we head into the final 8 weeks of the season. Hopefully we can help other people have good nights because this is a fairly monster slate, but I think it's somewhat easy to navigate because there's a couple chalky spots that I think are easy to avoid. There's some bad teams, low road totals, that type of thing that I think you can avoid. So I think even though there's 24 teams, you could start narrowing it down fairly quickly.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just this dynamic pricing. There isn't much value, in terms of cheap playable lines. So it's spending up super expensive doesn't seem ideal, especially with line pricing is whatever. But being unable to punt defensemen who actually do stuff now makes lineup construction a lot more complicated. And I know a lot of people are complaining about it, and this is taking the fun out, this and that. There's an edge no matter what the prices are, what the rules are. So we got to find that edge. We got to win that money. And yeah.
One thing I'll say about that is that by definition, if some players are overpriced, then some players have to be underpriced. And that's honestly how I approach that Saturday slate. I never build around defensemen. But considering how expensive Thomas Harley and Drew Doughty and all those guys were, Zach Werenski was the first guy in my lineup, and I built my lineup around Zach Werenski because I felt he was at least $1,500 underpriced. So, well, yeah, I don't like some of the pricing. I agree. I prefer the way it was a month ago. I do think that there still are ways to find value. You just probably have to change the way that you build your roster a little bit.
Yep, and that's what we're here to do. We'll find you that good stuff. Let's get into this slate. It's a big boy, but before we do, just wanted to extend a thank you to you guys for your support with the affiliates, just liking the videos, this and that. We have the regular affiliate link that will get you any DFS membership. You can use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off your first week or month of any subscription. However, we also have the Odd Shopper link. If you are looking to get into the sports betting side of things, there are some people who do tune in here for the sports betting. You can click on that Odd Shopper link. It is the second one. You can use, forget the promo code. It was, let me go look it up, but it is, no, the promo's over. I will get you guys a promo code for that as well. We can create one. We can get you some percentages off. So if you are interested in going premium for Odd Shopper, just shoot me a DM, shoot me a message on Discord. I can get you a discount code for that as long as you go through our link, and we'll go about our days and everyone will be happy and we win money. Let's get into the slate. Like I said, it is a big one. It's basically a 12-game turbo, which is interesting. But the first game of the night, we have the Anaheim Ducks. They 2.6 total heading into Buffalo. The Sabres have a 3.4. Tuck and Jason Zucker are game time decisions. They're both seem like they're going to play. We'll find out at warmups. It's an early start, but as it is, Buffalo running Tage Thompson, Peterka, Kulich, Tuck, Zucker, McLeod, and Cousins, Quinn, Greenway. Anaheim going with Toronto, Terry Strome, Gauthier, Fabry, Lundestrom, Leo Carlson, McTavish, Killorn, Trevor Zegras suspended for 3 games for his hit on Michael Rasmussen, who got hurt. That's probably why he got 3 games. This is an interesting game because both these teams suck defensively. And there is not much ownership on this game. Buffalo has one of the higher totals on the slate. Anaheim doesn't have a very high total at all. However, like we mentioned off the top, there's a lot of, lines in this 14 to 17, 18K range that, mid-range builds are becoming more prevalent now with it being much harder spending up for like the likes of Colorado 1, Edmonton power play, etc. That being said, like Anaheim 1 here is 16,200 coming in at 4.2% projected. They're fully correlated. Buffalo's penalty kill isn't great. Their goaltending, like Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, has been better since the beginning of the season. We're 8 weeks away from the end of the regular season. His save percentage is under 9 still. So, and not only that, they're going to see a bunch of that Thompson line. And in about a 100-minute sample, they have 3.7 expected goals against per 60. So if you're looking for a mid-range build starter here, I don't mind the Ducks top line here. They're a little bit negative leverage, but 4% on a 12-game slate, perfectly fine. That's probably the only Ducks line I'd be interested in full stacking. I think like if you need cheap 2-mans, you could do like Fabry, Gauthier, Lundestrom, Gauthier, Carlson, McTavish, Carlson, Killorn, something like that. But, that Ducks top line is what interests me on the Ducks side. On the Buffalo side, it really – if Tuck and Zucker play, like there's multiple lines that are in play. If they're out, I think anyway, I like the Tage Thompson, Peterka, Kulich line the best. Yes, they're pretty bad defensively, but in their 100 minutes together offensively, they are very, very good. The Ducks, not surprisingly, very, very bad defensively. Awful penalty kill. You get Peterka and Thompson on the top unit. They're 18,900. That's expensive, but it's a very good matchup, and they're coming in with 2.6% projected ownership. So it is both top lines that I like. If Zucker and Tuck both are in, that second line is 16,800. That's kind of a tough sell, despite you getting 2 of the 3 guys on the power play. At that point, if I can't get all the way up to Buffalo 1, I'll save the $600 and go play that Anaheim top line. I don't mind that third line at 12,500 just because it's so hard to find value. And that line at 12,500, it's a decent line going up against the middle 6 of the Ducks, which is just atrocious. But really, it's both top lines that I like in this game.
I'm going to say that I don't mind the Anaheim top line. If I play anything from Anaheim, it would be that 16,200 for Strome, Terry, Vetrano. Since January 1st, 3.2 expected goals, 3 actual goals per 60 minutes for that top line. Like they've been really good at 5-on-5. And also with Trevor Zegras out, remember when Zegras came back, the top line saw their ice time go down. It's something I think it's worth mentioning. here, and we'll talk about the Montreal game as well. But when this lineup is healthy, like they don't want to play Terry and Vetrano and Strome like 19, 20 minutes, but they kind of don't have a choice now. Like they're basically back down to a 2-line team. So I don't hate Anaheim here, but for me, this is a Buffalo game, like pretty easily. Don't get me wrong, like Anaheim goaltending's been good enough that they've ruined a lot of DFS nights where Dostal or Gibson saves like 36 of 38 shots, and that's that's the way that goes. But Buffalo has the fourth. There are 24 teams here. Buffalo has the fourth highest team total of any team, and their top line with the best 5-on-5 goal scorer in the league this season is under 3% ownership, and they're under 19K. This isn't like a 21 or 22K line. Like you mentioned, Thompson, Peterka, Cooley, 74 shot attempts, 3.5 expected goals per 60 in their time together. They're not getting a ton of ice time, but they're certainly very efficient with the ice time that they do get. I really do like that Buffalo top line. So the line that I have the most interest in this game certainly is Thompson, Peterka, Cooley.
Toronto Maple Leafs, what fellas they are, with a 3.2 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 2.7 total. The Bruins are still missing Charlie McAvoy. Obviously, Hampus Lindholm is out for the season. They're missing one other blue liner too, right? No, Lowry came back, right?
Yeah, it's just the two of them.
Yeah, but those are easily their two best defensemen. So the issue is, because I like attacking teams, especially Boston, who are missing two of their best defensemen, is Toronto 1 is 23,000. And if this was the old pricing, like, yeah, you probably could find decent value with it. It's just really hard to fit them in with this dynamic pricing. Not only that, there are 24 teams on this slate. This is a $23,000 road line in Boston, where notoriously they struggle. Now, that's like batter versus pitcher type deals, but I can't just help but keep that in the back of my head. 23,000, it's kind of like with dynamic pricing, 23,000 is kind of like when Tampa 1 was like 26.8. They're a good line, but they're not worth the price, right? In 320 minutes this season, 3.3 expected goals per 60. That's very good. But at the same token, the Buffalo top line's at 3.5 or whatever, and they're $4,000 less in arguably a better matchup. So if you want to play Toronto 1, I have no issue with it. It's just like that price is just really hard to build a single entry lineup in. And on top of that, like the second line has played very, very good together. Tavares and Nylander have a very good sample together. And they'll see a bunch of that Lindholm, Marchand, Coyle line, which has been pretty bad defensively in an almost 200-minute sample. So if I'm going to play Toronto here tonight, it is more than likely going to be Toronto 2. Obviously, you could one-off Nyes or one-off Marner, but like even Nyes is 6,400. That's just banana land. Like, why pay 7,600 for Marner when you can pay $200 more for Tavares or for Nylander in a better 5-on-5 matchup, and you're still getting him on the power play? So it is Toronto 2 for me. I don't mind Toronto 3. Whenever McMahon, Domi, and Robertson have been together, they have played very well, unless Holmberg is on the third line. I didn't see line confirmations. I see in our top stacks we have McMahon, Domi, Robertson, but I see some different stuff. If it is McMahon, Domi, Robertson, I don't mind that third line, but it is Toronto 2 that I like. On the Boston side, really outside of a Pastrnak one-off, I'm probably out on Boston.
Yeah, I agree with that. No real interest in the Bruins here. The Toronto side is interesting because, like, Matthews has a very strong projection. Like, I think he's the second highest projected skater on Stokastic here tonight. Oddly enough, the only guy higher is David Pastrnak. So, like, those guys as one-offs are fine. Here's the thing is that if I'm playing Toronto tonight, it's because of the power play. Like the Bruins penalty kill is still just so bad. And they're still taking a lot of penalties, like far too many penalties. Boston over the last 5 weeks of NHL play. So like 7 weeks, including the 2-week break or whatever, 3.1 times shorthanded per game. It's one of the highest, it's the highest rate of penalties in the league. So this 5-4 Toronto power play has actually been pretty good. Not super elite, like Tampa Bay at their best good, but still really good. And if I'm playing Toronto and I'm playing them because it's a great power play spot, which it is, I want Nylander in my lineup. Like that's one thing that we always say is like he is just too involved in the power play to not have him in your stack. So I think this is a situation where, yeah, I agree. I if I'm full stacking an even strength line, it would be the second line. It would be Tavares, Nylander, Holmberg. But I have no problem just like 2-man stacking like Matthews and Nylander, or just one-offing Matthews or one-offing Nylander, like something like that. Those are the two players that I think you should be focused building around. Nylander especially, because he is hyper involved with their power play, everything from zone entries to when they move the puck around, like just his involvement in goals, like everything. So I would, oddly enough, this is a situation where I would build around Nylander. So whether you want to just do the second line, I think that's fine. Whether you want a 2-man with Matthews, I think that's okay. If you have a bunch of cheap one-offs from across the slate and you want to do like a Matthews, Marner, Nylander, I think you can do that as well. I think Matthew Nyes is arguably one of the worst values that we've ever had in DFS, period. So enjoy that hat trick game that he's going to have here tonight. Sure. Yeah, I don't really have interest in the Bruins. I think for me, this is about the Leafs and the Leafs power play guys. Nylander and Matthews would be the guys I would be focused around in that order.
Yeah, I concur. Bigly. Carolina Hurricanes, they 3.5 total. Heading into Montreal, the Fighting Cliffies have a 2.5 total. So Owen Beck in the lineup with Newhook on a line with Newhook and Line. That's going to be a motorboat situation. But status quo for Montreal outside of that, Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Gallagher, Dvorak, Anderson. Carolina going Rantanen, Jarvis, Aho, Svechnikov, Stahl, Martinook, Hall, Blake, Kotkaniemi. Carolina won fully correlated 21,500. They're $1,500 cheaper than Toronto won, and that matters. 21,500 is about as high as I'm willing to stack a full line. And this is a spot that I'm willing to do it because this is an excellent 5-on-5 matchup and an excellent power play spot. That top line fully correlated. Aho and Jarvis have excellent numbers together. Mikko Rantanen is going to come around. His shooting percentage is just, I think it's way too low. It's like a fourth of his career shooting percentage. It will come back up. They're coming in at 3.3% projected. It doesn't matter the 5-on-5 matchup. I do really like Carolina 1 here. If you do need some cheaper lines here, I think Carolina 3, Martinook 12,500. They have a top 2 stack of 0.8, and their ownership is coming in at 5.2%, which kind of sucks, but like it is a good valuable line of 5-on-5 here.
Should mention that the lines that we have in top stacks are not the lines that they had at morning skate.
I didn't even see their morning skate.
Yeah, they had Aho, Jackson Blake, and Taylor Hall on the top line. Svechnikov, Roslovic, Rantanen on the second line, and then Stahl, Martinook, Jarvis.
Well then, that kind of puts a damper on what I wanted to do with Carolina, but I first instinct is I don't mind either of those top 2 lines. Like Roslovic, Rantanen, Jarvis is interesting just because they're going to play pretty fast. And if by God, if they get matched up with that line, it's just going to be a gong show. Obviously, Aho and Blake play well together. That's just a weird line. I think you could do some sort of power play stack. I don't even like, you could do like Aho, Jarvis, Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, 2-man. That's fine. Rod the Bod throwing curveballs at us is always a fun thing. But I don't mind that second line with Ralsovic at center. They need guys to play center. They obviously have lost faith in Kotkaniemi every year since he's gotten there and still extended him for some reason. So, yeah, I don't mind either of those top two lines. It's just an excellent 5-on-5 matchup. On the flip side, again, like Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, 15,800, 3.4% projected ownership. Like Carolina's not the defensive team they were last year. Like outside of the stall line, depending on the configuration, they're just not a great defensive team. So I don't have a problem going back to Montreal 1 here at that ownership and price. Like their price has come down $700 from the Saturday slate. And, you know, it's a good line. They've been so much better since they got put back together. They got broken up because they were terrible. And now they played much better together. So I don't mind Montreal 1 here. Carolina, I don't mind that Ralsovic line. I think you can do some sort of 2 or 3 man power play stack.
Yeah, the thing that worries me about the Hurricanes is like you can tell they're starting to press the panic button a little bit because things haven't, you know, I agree. Like Rantanen's going to be a lot better than it's 3 points in 7 games. I think that he has so far. Like that's not going to keep up. He will get a lot better. The question is like, how long does that take for them to get better? And what do the lines look like when it actually happens? What concerns me is like, this is a really good power play spot for Carolina. Montreal's still taking a fair share of penalties, not as much as Boston that we talked about earlier, but still amongst the most in the league over the last 5 weeks. Carolina power play hasn't been as good since Rantanen got there, but again, it's only been 7 games. And I think one of those games, Aho missed with an illness or something like that. So they've only had 6 games together on the power play. Like I'm just not that worried about it. So this is kind of like the Toronto situation where I think, you know, if you want to go ahead and use like Taylor Hall or Jackson Blake or whatever, like I think that's fine, but they're unbelievably expensive. So like, do I want to pay $4,600 for Taylor Hall or $5,600 for Andrei Svechnikov? You know what I mean? So I would do like Aho and Svechnikov. I would build around those two, add in one of Rantanen or Jarvis. This is a great power play spot still. Like I said, Montreal's still taking a lot of penalties. Even as their penalty kill has improved, their penalty kill itself has actually been pretty good, but they're still taking so many penalties that they're in the middle of the league for power play goals against per game over the last 5 weeks. So I would certainly like Aho, since Rantanen got there, has been playing like 21 minutes, give or take, regularly. I would probably build around Aho and Svechnikov just because Svechnikov is so cheap. Like he's literally only $1,000 more expensive than Taylor Hall, which is like, I don't know what's going on there. I would build around those two and then, you know, Brent Burns on the blue line if you want, or, you know, add in one of Rantanen or Jarvis, probably Rantanen, because I imagine he'd find some time up on the top line with Aho at some point. But that's what I would focus around this game. I wouldn't necessarily focus on an even strength line. On the Montreal side, like I don't hate the idea of playing Montreal 1, Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky. Like they have been really good. Their last 20 games, 3.3 expected goals per 60, 3.7 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5. Those are excellent offensive numbers. It's just a really bad power play spot for them. Carolina, whatever issues they have, their penalty kill still elite, top 3 in the NHL. Whether you look at the last 5 weeks, 10 weeks, or the entire season. The other thing is with Emil Heineman back. Remember when Montreal was playing their best, like late December into early January or whatever, basically until Heineman got run over by a car. Suzuki, they nuked the top line's ice time, right? Like the third and fourth lines were getting reasonable minutes. Like Suzuki was playing like 18 minutes and Caulfield and Slavkovsky were playing like 15, 16 minutes. Now, because they're 15,800, that ice time concern is kind of baked into that price. But I wouldn't expect like all 3 guys to play 19 to 21 minutes or whatever. That's all I will say here. I don't really have any interest in the Montreal depth or anything like that. If I play anything, it's their top line. But what interests me most is the Carolina power play guys.
Yeah, I think that Montreal top line can squeeze 17, 18 minutes because, like, I don't think Owen Beck, Line A, and Newhook are going to play more than 13, 14 minutes. That line's going to get run out of the building.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But, you know, what Line A line doesn't get run out of the building? Pittsburgh Penguins with a 2.7 total heading into Philadelphia. The Flyers have a 2.9. I really just don't have interest in this game. Crosby, Rust, Raquel, 21,300. That's really expensive. You want to play them in MME, that's fine. Hayes, Bunting, Tomasino at 13-1 is an interesting filler line. I don't mind it. I don't love it. On the Flyer side, like Konechny, Kuzmenko, Lawton at 17.8 is just a bit insane. Like Kuzmenko is 6,500. Lawton and Konechny in over 100 minutes this season haven't been great. You throw 6,500 Kuzmenko into the mix. It's like, okay, that's an easy fade. Tippett, Michkov, Couturier, that's fine. But like 16,000 with an anemic power play, like, all right, like, I guess in MME. So that leaves Forrester, Cates, Brink, and their play has kind of fallen off a cliff heading into Four Nations. They're 13-1, and I guess that's fine as a filler, but really I don't have any interest in this game.
Andrei Kuzmenko is more expensive than Jordan Kyrou tonight. Jordan Kyrou might have 35 goals, 35 assists this season.
Kuzmenko might have 35 shots this season.
Yeah, it's just that is holy hell. I talked about how Matthew Nyes might have the worst point per dollar value projection.
Kuzmenko.
It's Kuzmenko. He's under 1. I've never seen that. Anyways, yeah. So I don't hate the Pittsburgh top line here. The thing is like, since the Flyers started getting all their players back, all their players healthy, they've been pretty good defensively. 4th lowest expected goals against per minute per 60 minutes of 5-on-5 over the last 5 weeks. Goaltending's been hit or miss, so the goals against is more towards the middle of the league. But the penalty kill along with that for the Flyers has been good. So like, again, their goals against is only in the middle of the league. Like they haven't been horrific defensively. And if Sam Ersson plays well enough, this is actually a pretty tough matchup for the Penguins. So you look at 21,300 Pittsburgh won. We'll get to Tampa Bay in a second. They're only $600 more expensive. You can go play Toronto one for an extra $1,700. Florida is cheaper. Edmonton top line is cheaper. Like, there are just other spots I'd rather go to. So for me, kind of just out on Pittsburgh here. I will mention Kevin Hayes and Philip Tomasino. They still have excellent numbers together. They're a little bit more expensive than I like it's $7,900 for a 2-man stack. Not ideal, but I think once you get down to those third pairs and fourth lines or whatever from the Flyers, maybe they can do some damage, but that's about it from the Penguins. On the Flyers side, like, oh my God. Like, I'm not playing that Brink, Cates, Forster line. They're off the power play entirely. Offensive numbers have really taken a dive over the last 6 weeks. The Tippett line would probably be the line that I would go to, but Tippett and Michkov, but they don't get a ton of ice time. So I don't really have a lot of interest in the Flyers. I think, like, if you want a one-off like Michkov or one-off Konechny or something like that, I think that's okay. But Tippett, Michkov, and Couturier might all play under 14 minutes here tonight, and they're more expensive than the Montreal top line. Like, for me, it's like I said, one-off Michkov, one-off Konechny, something like that, or else I'm just passing on this on the Flyers here tonight.
There's some guy like hate watching this show, and the first 2 players he locked in are Matt Nyes and Andrei Kuzmenko, and they're both going to hat trick tonight. And we're just going to be like coming back on Thursday, be like, we're idiots. Calgary Flames with a 2.6 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have a 3.5 total. Capitals somehow still in the leading the President's Cup race. I will say, I watched that Caps Oilers game on Saturday. Pierre-Luc Dubois locked down Connor McDavid. Like, he looked really good. Ovechkin just defying. He looks ridiculous doing it, right? He looks so old, but he had a hat trick in that game. And I was hoping to just be like, oh, yeah, I'm fading Washington here tonight. But the Flames are just like, no, you're not, because Dan Vladar is starting tonight. Good stuff. Like, Strome and Ovechkin generally have their best numbers together. They've been heading into Four Nations. They played awful together. They had to break them up. But generally, that Ovechkin-Strome Protas line has been pretty good. Like, these Calgary lines are fine. Like, there's nothing that truly scares me defensively. You know, like Coleman, Backlund, Coronado was probably their best defensive line all season. They broke them up after that trade. So, like, I don't mind Ovechkin-Strome Protas here. But if we're being serious here and we're trying to save some money, I'm probably going to Wilson, Dubois, McMichael at 14.9 at 4.4%. It's just a Dan Vladar thing. And the thing is, like, Calgary's penalty kill sucks. So, like, from that standpoint, I get wanting to get Ovechkin in. But from a 5-on-5 stacking standpoint, it will be Washington 2 for me. If you want to do some sort of power play stack, hop on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's a good spot, especially with Vladar net. But from a 5-on-5 spot, it is Washington 2 for me. You know, like, that is dangerous to say because you know Ovechkin, if they have a lead late and the goalie's out of the net, he's coming on the ice until the game's over or he scores. But it is Washington 2 for me. On the Calgary side, like, these lines just aren't doing it for me. Like, I guess if anything, it'd be Backlund, Coleman, Zari, but I just don't have a ton of interest in the Flames here.
Yeah, with Logan Thompson starting, I'm just out on Calgary. Like, for me, on the Washington side, it would probably be Ovechkin, Strome, and Protas. You know, it's just Ovechkin obviously plays both halves of the power play. You mentioned the Calgary penalty kill. Not only is the Calgary penalty kill like struggling, and it has been honestly for a good little while, like at best you could say like middle of the league penalty kill percentage over the last 5 weeks, but like over the last 10 weeks, they're like 6th or 7th worst. They're also taking a fair number of penalties, 2.9 times shorthanded per game over the last 5 weeks. It's tied for the 4th most in the league in that span. So not only is the penalty kill not that great, but they're taking a fair number of penalties. So I want to get as many power play guys and as much power play time as I can. So like Ovechkin and Strome would be the locks for me, you know, certainly at least Ovechkin in the lineup. After that, it's like whether you want to add in Tom Wilson, whether you want to add in Pierre-Luc Dubois, whether you want to add in a defenseman, something like that. But I would certainly be building around Ovechkin and Strome. And remember, that line had struggled after Christmas, but they didn't get a ton of time with Alexei Protas. And that line was really good earlier this season, 3.3 expected goals, 66 shot attempts per 60 minutes. So now that he's back on that line, I suspect they'll be a little bit better at 5-on-5, at least offensively. So for me, it'd be building around Ovechkin and probably Strome along with him, whether it's adding Wilson, whether it's adding Dubois, whether, you know, like I said, whether you want to add a defenseman, you can probably just add John Carlson, but I think Chikrin's certainly always in play. Whether you just want a 5-man power play stack, I think that's fine. Like Calgary top line, not that great defensively. The penalty kill, not good. Dan Vladar, even worse. Like it's just a really good matchup for one of the top offensive teams in the league. So for me, it's the Washington power play guys. What I will say is Lars on the third line, Lars Eller and Ethan Frank have played really well together this season. 135 minutes at 5-on-5, 2.9 expected goals, 3.2 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Frank is on the second power play unit with Ovechkin. So is Mangiapane. And those guys are all really cheap. And if you need really cheap guys, because you're playing Edmonton, you're playing Tampa, you're playing Toronto, I think that Washington third line is one that you can look towards. And at least Ethan Frank, if not Frank and Mangiapane or Frank and Eller, something like that.
Dallas Stars with a 3.4 total heading into Columbus. Our Blue Jackets with a 2.6 total. Are these Dallas lines correct in our top stacks? I can't find them. Is Bork on the top line?
He was last game, and I'm pretty sure that's what their morning ski was. So, yeah.
Okay, I just couldn't find them. Anyway, I just wanted to confirm because I made the slip up with Carolina. If Tage Thompson's first in the NHL at 5-on-5 points per 60, you know who's third?
Marchenko? I don't know. No.
Yes. So? Did I freeze?
Yeah, you did.
Are we all freezing?
No, I
Did
think
Cliffy
I'm fine.
freeze or did I freeze? Someone tell me.
You're frozen, man.
Okay. I froze. So I am frozen. What is going on? My computer is saying I'm running perfectly fine.
Okay, you're back now.
I'm back now. That was weird because my computer's running completely fine. I was saying Tage Thompson's first in the NHL at 5-on-5 points per 60. Do you know who's in third?
Who?
Kent Johnson, baby. So
yeah. I didn't. For me, it wasn't. I don't think it was Thompson was first. He's first in goals per 60 minutes.
Oh, well, whatever. Kent Johnson's third in the NHL in points per 60 at 5-on-5. Anyway, sorry about that little freeze up there. I'm not really sure what happened, but par for the course with my internet in rural New Jersey. One cloud, orange, red. Columbus going Fantilli, Voronkov, Marchenko, Johnson, Jenner, Sillinger. Dallas going Duchesne, Marchment, Granlund, Robertson, Hintz, Bork, Johnston, Ben, Dodonov. This is a pretty interesting game. Dallas has a really high total and not much ownership. Yes, the Duchesne, Marchment, Granlund line, 14,400. They're coming in at 6.1% projected ownership. But honestly, on a 12-game slate, 6% is nothing to worry about at that price. Johnson, Ben, Dodonov, 5%, nothing to worry about at that price. Robertson, Hintz, Bork is interesting at 17.2 because they're coming in under 1% projected. You can do whatever you want with Bork, but like Hintz and Robertson have been playing excellent together, leading up to Four Nations, coming out of Four Nations. So I do like that Robertson, Hintz, Bork line. If you do need to get cheaper, I understand going to Duchesne, Marchment, Granlund. Duchesne and Marchment have a long history of playing well together with Sagan. Granlund can mirror pretty much what Sagan does. So at 14,400, they are definitely playable. It is a very good 5-on-5 matchup. It is a very good power play matchup. On the Columbus side, no one is playing Columbus 1.1%. If I was MMEing the 20, I would have like 1 or 2% of them just because they've been playing so well. It is expensive at 19.4. But nothing crazy where if you have 1 or 2% over 150 lineups that you can't overcome. I don't mind that second line two-man like you do like a Jenner Johnson, Sillinger Jenner. Like just looking for a cheaper two-man, I don't mind it. Obviously, we'll get to defensemen and Werenski is usually at the top of the list there. I do really like Dallas. There's 3 playable lines, but Duchesne, Marchment, Granlund, because of the price, is my favorite.
So I'll start on Columbus real quick. I don't have a lot of interest in the Jackets. Like, I certainly understand playing Fantilli, Voronkov, Marchenko because there's absolutely no ownership on them. And they have been really good offensively. What I will say is that with Boone Jenner back, Jenner, Johnson, and Sillinger are going to be getting the shutdown matchups when they're at home. They did in Jenner's first game back. So does Zach Werenski. And that means that the Fantilli, Voronkov, Marchenko line is not going to play with Werenski that much at 5-on-5 at all. In fact, if you look at Jenner's first game back, Werenski and Marchenko only played 3 minutes together at even strength. That's not a lot in a 60-minute game. Typically, they play about half their minutes with Werenski. That's what concerns me. And the fact that Dallas is an elite penalty kill, their last 30 games, they're giving up the fewest power play goals against per game of any team in the league. Like MME, sure, single entry. Like I'm just out on Columbus. For me, this is a Dallas game. I would probably go to that Duchesne Marchment line. You know, the big reason is that I don't think that they're going to see very much of the Zach Werenski matchup. That really helps Duchesne, Marchment, and Granlund. And Duchesne and Granlund have been really good together since Granlund got there. 3.2 expected goals, 4.6 actual goals per 60. Duchesne's on the top power play unit. They don't get a ton of ice time, but they're also 14,400. 6% ownership, like you said, on a slate this big, that's perfectly fine. So I understand playing Johnson, Hintz, and Bort. The price is fine. There's no ownership. Fill your boots. But Duchesne, Marchment, and Granlund have generally been very good. They're going to avoid Zach Werenski. They're a lot cheaper. I think they kind of fit more what I plan on doing with my lineup a little bit better here tonight.
Yep. Edmonton Oilers with a 3.3 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning also have a 3.3 total. Tampa Bay going Kucherov, Gensel, Point, Hagel, Cirelli, Gergensen. Really? That's wild.
Tampa's going 11-7. I imagine there's going to be about a half dozen different wingers on the Hagel Cirelli line tonight.
Yeah. Edmonton, as far as I know, because McDavid wasn't at practice yesterday, but it looked like Skinner was a placeholder. So I think they're going Connor McDavid, Zach Hyman, Victor Arvidsson, Draisaitl, Podkolzin, Matt Savoy. If you don't know who Matt Savoy is, he was one of the top prospects in Buffalo. He got traded for Ryan McLeod. The reason you haven't heard much from him, he's had injuries of the past few seasons. He was a first-round pick. He has a pretty high ceiling. Just a matter if he stays healthy. I think that's a pretty decent landing spot for him. I know he's been there for a few games, but yes. So Hagel, Cirelli, probably going out against top comp. Probably, definitely. That is McDavid, Hyman, Arvidsson. Now, listen, those guys, McDavid and Hyman are going to play so much, and they're probably going to take some shifts with Draisaitl, probably going to take some shifts with Nugent Hopkins. You know what I mean? So, for the most part, you'll see Cirelli and Hagel go out against McDavid as much as they can. It's still fine. Like, McDavid's matchup proof. Him and Hyman have very good numbers together. Arvidsson obviously is no slouch. The problem is 19,600 with Arvidsson there is a bit pricey. I think, going McDavid, Hyman, 2-man is fine if you want to look for a cheaper one-off than Victor Arvidsson elsewhere. That second line is interesting with Savoy there. They're 14,500. Like, Leon Draisaitl should be the front runner for the Hart, and he has a $14,500 line. Obviously Draisaitl, Podkolzin, and Arvidsson have had very good numbers this season, but so have Draisaitl and Podkolzin. Matt Savoy is just not some random third wheeler. He has the skill to stay there at 14,500. Avoiding the Cirelli Hagel matchup for the most point at 2.5%. I do really like that line. It's just kind of going back to that point. Am I cutting off my nose to spite my face, stacking Edmonton without McDavid? You know what I mean? That is the concern. But at 14,500, I think you can take a couple stabs here. Kucherov are on the Tampa side. Kucherov, Gensel, Point at 21,900 is the cheapest we've seen them since Gensel signed with Tampa, I think. 20.3% top two stack, 8.4% projected ownership. I don't mind it, but again, like you're getting to the point when you're in the 21,000s where it's really hard to get players a full lineup that you really like. Because even if you do have a second stack that you like with them, there isn't as much, 2,700 defensemen that are going to play 19 minutes and are live for the block bonus. You know what I mean? So like Kucherov one-off is fine. I don't know if I'd full stack. Sorelli Hagel 2-man, I think, is where I'd go on the Tampa side. But for me, I think I prefer the Edmonton side.
I think my issue, in a nutshell, I don't dislike Edmonton here. I think the issue for me kind of is how long are any of these lines going to stay together?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they've been changing the lines like often every single game. And I don't have any faith that, Victor Arvidsson stays on the top line. Is Zach Hyman going to be back down on the third line playing with Adam Henrique by the middle of the second period? Are they going to stack McDavid, Draisaitl, and Hyman by the end of the first period? So if we're going to be playing similar prices, I'll probably go to Point, Gensel, and Kucherov. Like you mentioned, this line was $5,000 more expensive like 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago or something like that. Like this line was in the $26,000 to $27,000 range. And now they're under 22K. And yes, they are hard to fit. I mean, we mentioned earlier, like Pittsburgh has a third line that I think is useful. Washington has a third line, even a fourth line that I think is useful. Montreal does. There are players across the slate that you can go find. And, the Tampa top line, for all their struggles, has still been good at 5-on-5. Not great, but a lot of it is shooting percentage driven. Like shooting under 9% since January 1st. This isn't a line that's going to shoot under 9% over a big sample. And, Edmonton's power play at best is middle of the road. Depending on which sample, which stats you look at, you can make a good case they're bottom 10. Goaltendings look bad. They look bad in their first 2 games back. Now maybe they'll be better here tonight, but considering how cheap Tampa 1 is relative to where they were, a month or so ago or whatever, I do like Tampa 1 here. They're not my favorite line on the board because I do think they're still a little bit expensive, but I would probably rather play them. I would rather play them than Pittsburgh. Let's put it that way. So I would probably rather play them than the Toronto 1 stack, just because I think Nyes is one of the worst pricings I've ever seen in NHL DFS. So I do think there is a case to be made for Tampa 1 here. So I don't mind them. On the Edmonton side, I think I'd be more inclined to one-off McDavid or one-off Draisaitl than I would be to stack anything. I just don't have any faith that any of their lines are going to stay together. And honestly, I'm wondering how long the power play itself is going to stay together.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair concern. They did have a day off and they did practice, so maybe Knobloch gives them a little bit of run. Does Gabby's Pizza have spicy meatballs? Yes. Bacon loves the spicy meatballs. This is my pizza place. I just wear this shirt all the time. I have 30 of them because they're so comfortable. New York Rangers with a 3 total heading into Long Island. That sucks for everyone involved. The Islanders have a 2.9 total. Islanders going Horvat, Lee, Duclair, Nelson, Palmieri, Holmstrom, Sipelkoff, Pajot, Zizekas. Rangers didn't run lines in practice. Chris Kreider is a game-time decision. Brandon Ottman may play, may not. There's 3 lines projected in double digits. The Islanders' top line is one of them. I know they're 15,300. Igor's in net. I know he's struggled, but 10% for an Islanders top line. They've been fine in a small sample, but I'm just not playing the Islanders top line. I have no interest in the Islanders second line. Nelson and Palmieri with Sipelkoff, yes. Without Sipelkoff, no. So I'm pretty much out on the Islanders. If you happen to get to Islanders top line, it's fine. The Rangers are Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They could look amazing or they can look awful. Just depends on how Igor's feeling. So if you do really like the Islanders here tonight, fill your boots. I'm just, at 15-3, I'd rather just go to, honestly, the Habs top line. On the Rangers side, we just don't know lines because they didn't run them and Chris Kreider's game time decision. I would imagine Miller and Panarin are going to be together. And since JT Miller got to New York, him and Panarin have pretty good numbers together, 3.2 expected goals, 3.7 actual. Cliffy had a good note. I think it was it in your article that, yeah, it was. Panarin with Fox is a lot different than Panarin without Fox, but Fox does go out a lot with that JT Miller line, so I don't mind Miller Panarin here. I don't know if Zibanejad's going to be on their wing. I don't know if Lafreniere is going to be on their wing. Could be Will Cooley. It all depends on Chris Kreider's status. So the only thing I can tell you is I don't mind a two-man of Miller Panarin.
I mean, I agree. If I play anything in this game, it's Miller Panarin X. I mean, we'll see at warmups. But the problem is this game is a 7:30 Eastern start, so be a bunch of games that have locked already. You're right about Panarin and JT Miller. They have looked the best together, 3.5 actual goals per 60. They'll skate 18 to 19 minutes. That would be my interest I have no interest. Chalk Islanders on a 12-game slate is just one of those. I put an X through the team and I don't even consider it. So I'm out on the Islanders. I don't really know what the Rangers depth is going to look like, and I don't have a lot of interest there anyway. So it's kind of by process of elimination. It's Miller, Panarin, and whomever is with them. I will say in general, I just do not have a lot of interest in this game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is a rivalry game. They're generally low scoring. There's going to be fighting. People are going to be screaming. It's in Long Island where offense goes to die. So, yeah, I kind of agree with you. Speaking of shit, Seattle Kraken with a 2.5 total heading into St. Louis. The Blues have a 2.5 total. I should have used my "this game sucks" on Pittsburgh Philly, but I may use it here, but I think there's another game coming up that I'm going to save it for. Cliffy was definitely right about St. Louis on Saturday. I was on the Holloway line. He was on the Thomas line. He reaped the rewards there. They're both the same price here tonight. They're both interesting plays because the Kyrou line is coming in at 5.5% projected and the Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors line coming in at 1.8% projected. Now, many people are saying that Seattle has a terrible penalty kill, but at the same time, they don't take many penalties. So I don't think you really need to focus on power play correlation here. It's just a matter of which line you want to go to. Now, Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors usually takes top competition. That means Beniers, Schwartz, and Kakko, which has been pretty good defensively. The thing is, 16,100, they play heavy minutes. You have minutes concerns with Suzuki, that line, right, at 15,800. For $300 more, you know what you're getting with this line. So, it's not the best 5-on-5 matchup, and if it's Decord and net, it's not the best goalie matchup, but I don't mind Thomas Buchnevich and Neighbors here at 1.8%. Now, I don't mind Shen Holloway and Kyrou here from the standpoint that they're going to see a Chandler Stevenson line. Those lines generally have been bad this year. They are coming in at 5.5%. I don't mind either of the lines. I just prefer 16,100. I know I'm going to get big minutes, and for that, it's Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors.
Yeah, I agree. With those minutes, Thomas Buchnevich Neighbors, Thomas and Buchnevich have been regularly around or over 20 minutes over the last half dozen games. Neighbors doesn't play a ton, but it doesn't really have to. I think this is a game where I would almost prefer Kyrou, Holloway, Shen, for the one reason being that they won't play much against that Kakko, Beniers, Schwartz line. And as you mentioned, that Seattle top line has been really good defensively just in general. over their last 10 games, even though the offense for the Seattle top line has gone down, their defense has still been really good. 2.3 expected goals against, 2.3 actual goals against. Mentioned Seattle doesn't take many penalties. Even though they've been taking a bit more recently, it's still well below the league average because they were so far below average, under average to begin with. So I think this is a case where Kyrou, Holloway, and Schenn has my interest, just because like going up against the Chandler Stevenson line, which even at its best iterations has been below average defensively, and at its worst ones has been abysmal defensively. Or McCann, Wright, like they have not been that great together, honestly. And that's one thing that's kind of surprised me, but they haven't been that good. So I do think there's good second and third line matchups for that Schenn, Holloway, Kyrou line. They struggled very recently, but even, since January 1st, 3.3 goals per 60 minutes, like they've still been good, and they are perfectly correlated on the power play in case they get there. So I think this is a case where I'm going back the other way and going with the Schenn, Kyrou, Holloway line. But I certainly understand wanting to play Thomas Buchnevich because, they're probably going to get over 20 minutes. I just think at 5-on-5, it's a lot better matchup for Kyrou and them. On the Seattle side, I don't really have a ton of interest here. I'm honestly kind of just waiting for Jordan Eberle to get moved back up the lineup. I feel like that's got to be coming fairly soon. But Seattle top line's falling apart offensively. McCann, Wright haven't really been that good. Stevenson hasn't found a ton of chemistry with his line mates. So I think I'm basically out on Seattle. For me, that's a St. Louis game, and I think I like the Kyrou line the best.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Seattle, and that's because I'm out on Seattle.
Don't really need to, no.
Yeah, once again, we're kind of on different sides of St. Louis, but no, I definitely echo your sentiments facing a Chandler Stevenson line. Like Florida Panthers with a 3.2 total heading into Nashville. The Preds have a 2.7. Florida going Reinhart, Verhaeghe, Barkov, Bennett, Rodriguez, Samoskevich. Nashville going Forsberg, Marchessault, O'Reilly, Stamkos, Nyquist, Svechkov, Novak, Evangelista, Kiefer Bellows. Tkachuk's still out. There's different reports on how long he's going to be out, but he's definitely out for the next few games. Reinhart, Verhaeghe, Barkov, 20,700, 15.3% top two stacks, 7.1% projected ownership. Now it's a good 5-on-5 matchup here as Forsberg and Marchessault just have not been good together this year defensively at all, even offensively. It's kind of a weird situation. I don't understand that completely, but like I want to like Florida 1 here because they're less expensive than Tampa 1. They're less expensive than power play stack in Carolina. They're less expensive than Toronto 1. But like they just haven't been great at all this year. 211-minute sample, 2.7 expected goals per 60, 1.9 actual. Cliff, like we mentioned on Saturday, and Cliff, you mentioned before the Four Nations, they're doing a lot of dump and chasing. That could work against this Nashville team as they're a pretty slow team. But at 20,700, like I'd rather just not spend that for them. The second line is interesting to me. I don't have a ton of interest in Evan Rodriguez at 4,700, but a two-man of Bennett and Samoskevich is 9,600. You get Samoskevich on the top power play. In a small sample, that line has been very good. So I don't mind a two-man of Samoskevich and Bennett. If you want to play Florida top line, I think that's fine. It's more of an MME play for me. On the Nashville side, like I don't have a ton of interest in that top line going out against Barkov. Svechkov, Stamkos, Nyquist is interesting, but 13.5 is just a little too pricey for me. If anything, I'll just go to two-man of Novak Evangelista for 7,100. They've played very well together this season. Doesn't really matter who's on their wing. So it would be a two-man of Novak Evangelista for me and Florida too.
I just have no interest in Nashville. It's a terrible 5-on-5 matchup for them. Maybe they get there on the power play, but like I'm not stacking the Nashville Predators against the Florida Panthers on a 12-game slate because I hope the power play can get there. So it's basically just Florida. Eventually, this top line has to have a big game, right? Like they aren't creating elite quality. 2.8 expected goals per 2.7 expected goals per 60. Sorry. But even at that, with the amount of actual just raw talent that they have, eventually they're going to have a massive game. It's just, when's it going to happen? Like this Nashville top line that they're going to be facing, 3.3 expected goals against, 4.1 actual goals against. Marchessault and Forsberg have just been abysmal defensively together this year. It doesn't matter if it's with Stamkos or O'Reilly or whomever. They just have not been good at all. And the Nashville penalty kill has taken a dive basically since the opening 6-8 weeks of the season. Over the last 5 weeks, they are giving up the third most power play goals against per game in the NHL. Over the last 10 weeks, it's the seventh most power play goals against per game in the NHL. Not having Tkachuk there for the power play certainly hurts, but all those guys are perfectly correlated on the top power play unit. Because Tkachuk is out and they don't play the fourth line very much, those guys are all going to play 20 to 22 minutes in all likelihood. So I don't mind Florida 1 here, but I'm going to be honest. I'd probably rather just pay the extra $1,200 to go play Tampa Bay instead. So I don't mind them. I would rather play them than Toronto 1 or something like that. But I do think there's a couple lines in that expensive range that I'd rather play, Tampa Bay certainly being one of them. So again, this is a case where there's just not a ton of overall interest for me in this game in a single entry.
Yep. Detroit Red Wings with a 2.7 total heading into Minnesota. The Wild have a 2.8. We have landed on this game sucks. Jarks and Ek got hurt in practice yesterday. It sounds like it's a long-term injury. We don't know what the second line is going to be, but whatever it is, it's going to be very cheap. The top line is Boldy, Zuccarello, Rossi. And then after that, it could be Marcus Johansson, Freddie Gaudreau, Liam Olgren, Vinny Hinostroza could be there. Marcus Foligno could be. We just don't know. Either way, it's going to be cheap. And if you want to play them against Detroit, if you need a super cheap line, I guess it's fine. Detroit going Larkin, Raymond, Casper, Kane, DeBrincat, Comfer. Rasmussen is out. He got hurt on the Zegras hit. The highest projected line on the night here is Minnesota 1. 10.5% top 2 stack, 14.9% projected ownership. In 200 minutes together this season, they're underwater by Corsi. They're not controlling the play. 2.8 expected goals per 60, 4.2 actual. So they're shooting at a high percentage, and they're pretty bad defensively. So at 17,600 at almost 15%, the most highest projected line on the night, in single entry, it's an easy fade for me. If they burn me, I'll wake up tomorrow, the sun will rise, and I'll go walk bacon. You know what I mean? So in single entry, I'm out on Minnesota 1. If you in single entry, if you're trying to power play stack something together and you need a cheap, really cheap 2-man, Minnesota 2 is fine because the middle 6 of Detroit is just absolute crap. Do I like Minnesota 2, whatever it is? No. But they're gonna probably under 10K. On the Detroit side, I don't mind Larkin, Raymond, Casper from this standpoint that Boldy, Zuccarello, Rossi have been pretty bad defensively. The problem is 18,200 is a problem on the road in Minnesota with their full accoutrement of defensemen. So I'm pretty much just out on this game.
Yeah, I will say I think I'm a little bit higher on Minnesota for the reason being that these guys are going to have to play a lot of minutes. I feel pretty I'll never say 100% anything in any hockey game. That's just ridiculous. I feel extremely confident saying that entire top line are all going to play over 20 minutes here. And honestly, you could probably see them play 20 22, 23, 24 minutes because they just have to. Like, they just don't have anybody else to play. That's kind of the issue. And any line getting that much ice time for under 18K, even if they're the chalkiest line of the night, I feel like you have to at least consider them. You know, the Detroit penalty kill typically not been that great since McClellan took over. 5-on-5, they've been better defensively, so it's not a great 5-on-5 matchup. But like you said, like, even if they're riding hot by shooting percentage, they're still creating above average shot attempts, above average expected goals, and just being above average with as many minutes as they're probably going to have to play. I think you have to at least consider them. I would rather play chalk Minnesota than chalk Islanders. I can tell you that much.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of where I am. On the Detroit side, it is tough to play that top line at that price, 18,200. What I will say is that top line has been really good.
Yeah.
With Casper there, 3.4 expected goals, 3.1 actual goals per 60. Larkin and Raymond are on the power play. Minnesota still has a very bad penalty kill. Detroit's power play has been absolutely obscene since McClellan took over. There are a bunch of stats flying around about how many power play goals that Detroit has scored since McClellan took over, but they have 28 in 23 games since McClellan took over. No other team has 20. The next closest team has 18. They have 10 more power play goals than the next closest team over the last 2 months. It's absolutely crazy how good that power play is. So, if you want to avoid the ownership, I think you can play Detroit. But like you mentioned, the fact that they have all their defensemen, like Joel Eriksson-Ek wasn't having that great of a defensive season. I think missing him hurts them offensively more than anything. Like, you still have Gaudreau, you still have Foligno, you still have those guys, plus all the defensemen. You still have a pretty tough 5-on-5 matchup. So I think Detroit one is fine. Honestly, I'm still giving some consideration to Minnesota, even if they are highly owned.
Yeah. No, and I get it. And the more lineups I'd make, the more likely I can consider them. But in single entry for me, I'm not going to have the Minnesota top line. But that's just me. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.4 total heading into Utah. The Soakers have a 3.6 total. Chicago with new lines. They're going Nazar, Bedard, Bertuzzi, Teravainen, Foligno, Mikheyev, Slaggert, Doc, Donato. I don't mind Nazar, Bedard, Bertuzzi. But not on the road on a 12-game slate. You know what I mean? Like, if this was like a 6-game slate and they're at home to, like, the Sharks. Yeah. But, like, Nazar, Bedard, Bertuzzi on the road in a brutal 5-on-5 matchup. Utah is very, very good at 5-on-5. They have Marino and Durzi back, so, like, those are probably their two best defensive defensemen. I'm out on Chicago. And someone's going to say, what about the power play? Yes, it is a good power play spot, but I think on Saturday you're like with Bedard, Jones, and Donato on the ice, they're shooting like 43% or something ridiculous like that. So like that's not sustainable. If you want to play Chicago and pay the rake, knock on some wood. Go ahead. I'm out on Chicago. I do like that top line though. I'll save it for a better matchup. The Utah side is a little bit more interesting. Keller, Cooley, Schmaltz, Genther, Hayton, Carconi. I'm going to kick it to you real quick because I'm going to kindly bring him downstairs.
Here's one thing I'll mention is that the Utah top line, Keller, Cooley, Schmaltz, coming in with less ownership, much higher top two stack percentage than that second line. That second line coming in heavily over-owned. Carcone and Genther have actually been pretty good together this season. It's only been 75 minutes, but 80 shot attempts, 3.2 expected goals, 3.1 actual goals per 60. Hayton and Genther both on the top power play unit. Chicago's power play has been slipping, over the last 4 to 6 weeks. So I do think there's a case to be made for Utah's second line, even if they are coming in over-owned. But, Keller, Cooley, and Schmaltz have scored well. They're kind of like that Minnesota problem where they're generating fine, but they're riding hot by shooting percentage. The only thing is they're coming in with like half the ownership that Minnesota is. So I would probably prefer Utah 1. I do think there's a case to be made for both lines. And honestly, I'm still fine playing that Utah second line at 10% ownership or whatever. It's so easy to get different on a 12-game slate elsewhere.
Yeah, I was going to be on Utah 1 too. I was going to say like Hayton, Carcone, and Genther have played excellent in their sample. Utah 1, it's like they're kind of in that Buffalo 1 price range. So it's like you can't really play both of them, you know what I mean? I think I slightly prefer Buffalo, but yeah, just because Chicago has a decent penalty kill, you know what I mean? And if you're going to power play stack Utah, you're going to want Genther anyway. But yeah, let's get to defensemen here. Zach Werenski still underpriced at $7,500. He had his price went down $100 from Saturday. Top of the board is Werenski, Yossi, Bouchard, Dahlin, Weegar, Hedman. Really, like at that point, like if I'm spending up, it's gonna be for Zach Werenski or Rasmus Dahlin. Like otherwise, I'm gonna be in the mid range or cheap guys. Hopefully, there's some value that Cliffy can unlock for you.
Yeah, top of the board on Stochastic is Werenski again. He's not quite the value he was the other night because obviously Dallas is a much tougher opponent than Chicago. So this isn't, I said Saturday I put in Werenski first and then built around it. That's definitely not what I'm doing facing the Dallas Stars, but Werenski's still fine. I do like Rasmus Dahlin a lot. It's a great home matchup for him. Also think Victor Hedman is perfectly fine here. Like he is 6K against an Edmonton team with a struggling penalty kill and struggling goaltenders to say the least. So I'll mention them. If you want to get a little bit cheaper, like Thomas Harley, played 24 and change the other night. He's going to have to play a lot of minutes. Like Liam Bichal is out as well, so he might have to play a lot of minutes again here for the Stars. Moritz Seider is in a pretty good spot for Detroit power play wise. Same thing with Mikhail Sergachev for Utah. Getting a little bit cheaper, like Jackson Lacombe feels like a pretty good play here tonight. He projects well. It's only 4,200. With Zegras out, I'm wondering if Lacombe doesn't go back to the top power play unit. Because remember, Anaheim had been running a 5-forward power play. They booted Lacombe off when Zegras came back. Now that Zegras is suspended, I'm wondering if they don't just move Lacombe back. And it's not like the power play was good, but getting power play time is always better than not. So I do like Lacombe. Brent Burns, Esa Lindell, for the same reasons as Thomas Harley's going to have to play some minutes here tonight. Travis Sanheim for the Flyers at home against Pittsburgh. Getting a little bit cheaper, like Jonas Brodin for Minnesota. I think anytime he's under 4K, I'm always interested. Adam Pelech for the Islanders. Don't have a lot of interest in that game for forwards, but defensemen, I think Adam Pelech, even Alex Romanov, certainly in play here. Nikita Zadorov for Boston. I think in the first game without McAvoy, he played 25 minutes. He's generally not a great DFS play overall, but 3,800 for 25 minutes, I think you have to consider just about anybody. For the really cheap guys, like Ian Cole under 3K is the guy that sticks out for me. Matt Dumba, I guess, for Dallas, just because Bichal is out. Dumba might have to get some more ice time. Parker Wotherspoon from Boston, I think, is an under 3K guy that is playable here tonight. Kevin Ball is right at 3K for Calgary, and he's supposed to be back in the lineup for the Flames tonight, so he's okay. Scott Perunovich for the Islanders, he's under 3K, and Riker Evans for Seattle, he's under 3K. These are all guys I think are probably going to play at least 16 minutes, if not push close towards 20, and are punts that are playable.
Yeah, just a quick note on Jackson Lacombe. 2 games out of the 4 nations without power play time, he was over 25 minutes in both. So there you go. Let's talk about some. We're not talking about you, Bacon. Come here. We're talking about goalies here. He is in a feisty mood today. Just bear with me. If I'm spending up, it will be for Logan Thompson. In the mid-range, I don't mind the goalie in the Rangers game, Sorokin or Igor. Joey DeCourt at 7,400 makes some sense. And if I'm punting, it would probably be Montembeault at 6,900.
Yeah, Logan Thompson tops projections today for goaltenders, tops my board as well. Great matchup against Calgary. Hold on. Pardon me. I don't mind Karl Vejmelka at home against Chicago either. I think Sam Ersson is also playable at 7,900 just because the Flyers have been getting so much better defensively. So those are kind of the more expensive goalies that I would look at. If you want to get cheaper, certainly Igor on the road against the Islanders at 7,600, I think makes a lot of sense. As long as UC Saros gets the start for Nashville, I think he's fine. Just because the Florida top line has been struggling to score so much, and no Matt Tkachuk. Hopefully Saros doesn't get blown up here. I don't mind playing Montembeault. I never mind playing goalies against Carolina Hurricanes. So if you want to punt down to him, I think he's okay. I'll also mention Arvid Soderblom from Chicago going up against Utah. Like if Utah can't get the power play going, then maybe Chicago will be fine at 5-on-5. So I think he'd be one of the punts I consider as well.
Yep. We will be back on Thursday. I don't think it's probably a really big slate since tomorrow there isn't many games. Thursday is another 12-game slate. But yeah, we'll be back Thursday and Saturday. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
You know what? I said kind of like them for their ice time here tonight, so I'll just go with it. Marco Rossi.
I already used him once this year, so I'm going to switch. I'm going Sam Bennett. Just random Sam Bennett shout out. Adios to you too, Mark. Good seeing you. Good luck, everybody, tonight. We'll see you in Discord. Hopefully we win some money. It's always a good night when people win money, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Good luck tonight, everyone.